The Wellness Show, episode 77.
Welcome to The Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyson Bannigan, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more. So welcome to The Wellness Show, and today I have David Cowan online today, and we're longtime friends and got involved in dowsing way back in the day. And he brought to me the magic of dowsing. He came back from a workshop when I remember he was actually with Raymond Grace, and he said, "Hey, look at this," and he has this dangle in front of my eyes. And right then I said, "Hey, if he could do it, I can do it." And so that started our journey together, and into that dowsing world we went, both together. And he's actually, the exciting thing with David is that I remember as he was doing quantum, what was it?
Biofeedback.
Quantum biofeedback. And within a short period of time, David was actually faster than the machine because he had internalized all the programs, and that blew me away. I thought, wow, this technology on this planet is only there for us to learn how to do it ourselves. So without further ado, David, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Tyson, and I'm just thrilled to be reconnecting with you now. And I well remember that day when I sat down and showed you a few spins, and I realized right away, okay, this guy's primed, this guy's ready, because you just grabbed it and ran. And you know, Raymond did say at that class, which was my introduction to this form of dowsing, that a certain percentage of you will look at this and put it on the shelf. Another percentage will look at this and maybe work at it a little bit here and there. And another smaller percentage of you are going to get it right away, and you're just going to take the ball and run. And that described me, and I think that also described you.
Yeah, it really got me excited because before that, I just couldn't make it work. The partner I had at the time had a big pendulum, and she was showing me how to do it. It didn't click. But when you came back, I said, "This guy's got it," and he got it fast, so I can do that. So I went with the next Raymond class, Grace class myself, and wow, that was a real eye-opener, and I've been using his clearing technique ever since, to be quite frank. And I've reached thousands of people using his techniques.
Yeah, he is definitely a gift to the planet, and much to my joy, is still out there moving around and showing people his gifts and what he's brought forward. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, we don't have him anymore in Canada because he can't get across the border because he wants to bring his gun.
Yes, and he won't fly because they won't let him carry his Bowie knife.
That's right. So we're limited to our opportunity to be with Raymond in person. We have to go to the States.
Yeah. Or his disciples like us.
Yes, exactly. So you've been doing lots since then, and you've got a wonderful website and amazing courses, one of which I attended in person, which actually helped me around gratitude and appreciation on some very, very deep levels. So David, could you talk about a bit about some of the courses that you're now offering?
Sure. Erina, my wife, and I, we share this work together. And as you know, we also co-authored the book Dowsing Beyond Duality, which Raymond actually endorsed. And so we've been teaching and developing our own form of this work, which we've now labeled Mind Field Repatterning. Because we find that, with the term dowsing, although we understand it through our experience as we do, many folks in the public still associate the term dowsing with, the earlier form, what we call classic dowsing. The farmer with the rods looking for water in the field, and that's fine, and that's a bona fide application. But as both you and I know, there's so much more to it. So we use the term Mind Field Repatterning, and for quite some time we were actually traveling a fair bit teaching this method. And then about 2 years ago, we realized, wait a minute, the internet is making so much of this work available to so many more people now, and we don't have to travel and upset our lives and all this. So we've been doing most of our work online with individual clients, but also with classes. And just recently we decided, there's something about that face-to-face interaction that the internet, it's approaching, but not quite the same. So actually October 1st and 2nd coming up next weekend, we have our first live dowsing class, Mind Field Repatterning 2-day class. And interestingly, we're holding it at Peaceful Meadows, which was the location that Erina and I visited here about 9 or 10 years ago, and where we fell in love with the area. So it seems like a big completion, or perhaps another cycle, starting up with revisiting Peaceful Meadows, which happens to be the home of Hannah Kroger. Some of the listeners might recognize her as really the mother of health food stores, and one of the champions of naturopathy, the old European German style of naturopathy, which has largely slipped from our awareness. So anyway, it's a thrill to be involved with that. We have another whole avenue of teaching, which we now call A Course in Relationship. And I'm thinking that's probably the one you attended. At the time, we called it a Soulful Communication. And this has more to do with changing the way we perceive each other and ourselves in relationship, and recognizing the value of relationship as a tool for our own self-awareness and inner growth. On the outside, the program is intended to help people improve the quality of their relationships, and not just immediate, family and partners, but relationships with even people in the past, and those incidental relationships we all have day by day. So that course is starting up also shortly, and it's a 7-week online program. The course is called A Course in Relationship, and as in your case, it also still provides the coaching component towards the attainment of a license as a spiritual health coach. So we're still aligned with that federation of boards that offers licensing for those who want to enter into this work as a profession. And so that's still, part of what we're offering in our programs. But those two areas pretty well keep us busy, as well as, ongoing projects like writing and having fun doing interviews and things like that.
So if I might remember correctly, then because of the board approval, then people that take your course, they can use those as towards becoming spiritual healers. What's the sort of the designations that falls under now? I know they've changed it.
Well, it's still, licensed spiritual health coach.
Okay.
And for those who would rather not use the word spiritual in the title, you can also qualify as a licensed quantum health coach. So that's the designation. And again, we're talking about the Federation of Spiritual Health Coach Boards, which has been around for decades and backs this license. So, we're very happy to still be aligned with them.
Yeah, and for you that are listening to this show and are a practitioner, you might want to look into that both in Canada and the United States. It's really important that you understand what licensing is about for your own protection, and also to provide that confidence and quality to your clients, that they know that you are certified, and that that there's backing to the courses and training that you've taken.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're having a lot of fun, and looking forward to actually doing more traveling. We've sort of had a hiatus from that, but now with again, with a lot of the connections we've made over the internet, and I'm sure this is true for you, we now have folks and contacts in countries around the world, and so we're kind of excited about some prospects for travel as well.
Great. So if you could wave a magic wand and anything were possible, what would that look like?
It would look like a yacht in the Greek islands.
Oh, that's great. I like that. Okay. As long as there's room enough for me, right?
Oh, it's a big yacht. Yeah.
That big yacht. Great. So you want to take your training to other countries, right?
Yeah, yeah, and there's a growing community of what I call awakeners, people from all walks of life and in all cultures who are beginning to recognize something within themselves that is almost pushing them to a broader perspective and a deeper opening. This is definitely a time of activation and awakening on the planet, and I like to call it the popcorn effect. Back in the day, meeting folks who were, resonant with a lot of these metaphysical ideas and practices was fairly rare, but it's getting more and more common, and I'm sure you can validate this yourself. And many of these folks that are waking up now are incredibly hungry and looking for understandings and, concepts that they can root what's coming from within themselves into their lives and experiences. So we feel very honored to be able to offer some of these teachings to folks who are ready.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful way to proceed. I was just at a Canadian Society of Questers conference, and we had a guest speaker who was from Whidbey Island, and he's created a sanctuary there. And he said developing very interesting in his talk on the Friday night, and that was, he said that there's more evolution and consciousness on the planet than we are aware of. He says, and the example he used is the concept of the culture creatives. And he said that worldwide, the population of culture creatives is around almost 1/3 of the population. I found that absolutely mind-boggling. He says the thing about culture creatives is that they're used to not talking about this. It's almost like they're buried within the status quo of the culture and haven't found their voice yet. They don't feel comfortable about talking about the inner dialogue that's going on, the spiritual ahas that they're having. And that in many ways, he didn't say it, but I'll put words in his mouth, or I think you would agree, is they're looking for community. They're looking for like-minded people that they can share this part of themselves. So I found that an incredible positive story, and I really want to believe that. And even if it isn't true, it gets me inspired, right?
Sure, sure. Well, it's funny you should mention Whidbey Island. That was where Erina and I were married.
Wow. Yeah, it's a special place. I love that place. And of course, my roots are there too. That's where I worked with Robert Cabot as a philanthropist. We granted $5 to the emerging new age awareness that was supposed to be birthed in the late 70s, early 80s on the west coast of North America. I think we're a little bit ahead of schedule, but maybe the planet is maybe catching up now.
Sure, sure. Seeds planted and all kinds of things going on for quite some time, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So the evolution of consciousness is really what excites you, right?
Yes, and observing that from many different perspectives and realizing it's much grander and much more, how can I say, cosmic than any one perspective can capture. And this is why I suppose there's some degree of confusion perhaps from a lot of folks as to what is actually occurring and unfolding at this time, because every domain, every area that we can operate from, whether it's the physical, the mental, the emotional, the energetic, the social, political, the economic, it's all up for review. And in that light, I'll share a vision that came to me a couple months ago. It was one of those early morning dreams that wakes you up, and is so vivid that it's important. Mm-hmm. And in this dream, I had driven up to this house, and it was an older house, but it was in very good shape. And I felt like I was considering it as, moving into, maybe buying or renting, that kind of thing. And then I glanced behind the garage where I had parked into the backyard. And the backyard was very large and all enclosed with a big fence, but it was completely burnt to a crisp. There was nothing there but ashes and cinder. And yet the house itself, which was right up against the backyard, was completely unscathed and unaffected. And that was it. And when I woke from that, I realized right away that this was a symbolic representation of the burning away of the past, the release from all of the jungle in the yard behind us, our history, if you like. And yet the house, which represents the present moment, is perfectly intact, perfectly unaffected by this burnt up past.
Yeah, I like that image. So what you're saying is don't get caught up into the what's burning up and what's disintegrating. And of course, you in the United States can see a lot of that happening around you. Just look at the election, but we won't talk about that. I mean, a lot of, a lot is happening on the planet that if you listen to the news, you think, oh my God, we're going to hell in a handbasket, or we've already arrived. But you're saying, nah, it's all going to be burnt up. Don't worry about it. Just stick in the house, which is your own body, your own being, and you're just going to be fine. You're just going to come through the other end. So don't get caught up in externality.
Yeah. And, it was reminded me also of what Ken Carey, who's one of my favorite authors, and actually wrote the foreword to my third book called Seeing Beyond Illusions. But he talked about this time as the end of history. And, what he's saying is that we are no longer doomed to repeating the patterns of the past because we can recognize it as completely gone, as a facet of our belief in time. Time itself is an aspect of the illusion, what we call the illusion. The experience of the separation of events in past, present, and future is in fact a mental construct that we designed in order to explain our experience here in time, space, and bodies. But it has no reality beyond that which we give it. So this is a very important thing to recognize, that when we see the patterns of the past dissolving before us, literally falling apart, this is it's a reason for celebration. Physicists tell us that in order for a new higher order of reality to emerge, there has to be a transitional period of chaos. And that chaos is, in fact, a necessary part of the creative process. So take heart, when your world is falling apart. We have many clients now whose lives are in upheaval. It's like their assumptions about who they are and what they're here to do are blowing up in their face. And yet it's freeing them at the same time to imagine new possibilities that they could have never seen otherwise.
Yeah, this is really systems theory, that you have to have perturbations in the system. The status quo can't hang on to the belief system anymore. The paradigm has so many contra indicators that it's not working, or whether it's social, political, economic, et cetera, and then we have this chaos that ensues, that either it all completely collapses or we have second order change. And quite frankly, I'm buying into the second order change, which is synthesis of a brand new way of being on the planet. But we do have to let go of what doesn't work, and we need to hold on to that part that will allow us to re-synthesize almost in our brain. I like the idea of time, that the time continuum is really the trap. Because now we're getting back to one of your passions and mine, and that's Mayan cosmology. That this is what the Mayans were trying to get across to us in their evolution and consciousness, was that time is an illusion. And so people got caught into this, hey, we didn't make it. What happened to this 2012? No grand aha, no final symphony, no, welcome to the new age. But it was more than that, wasn't it?
Oh, indeed. And, that the date was really a formal recognition of a process that has been unfolding for eons of time, and inevitably coming to this point of transition. I look at that end date as just like a birthday. It's one day of the year in which we recognize a cycle, but it certainly isn't a definitive experience. Although I do have to say that my daughter from Canada was down here on that date, December 21st, 2012. And we didn't know what to expect. Like most folks, we had kind of a Y2K consciousness about it. But nevertheless, we believed or had heard that something like 4 a.m. was the actual pivot point, right, where everything was going to change. And so there we were outside our house, staring up at the sky at 4 a.m, all bleary-eyed. And you couldn't see anything because the clouds were, covering the sky. And then just right around that time, the clouds parted and Orion was visible, the entire constellation of Orion. And exactly at the same moment, all three of us looked in that direction, and we saw a shooting star go right through the center of Orion. and we just looked at each other, our jaws dropped, and we went back into the house and went to sleep. But recently, I've seen that experience in a new context, because I understand from other researchers that a large part of this recent history, and let's call that 6,000 years of recorded history, is in fact marked by what some have called the Babylonian money magic system, which was the introduction of money as a means of control through debt. Okay, so debt slavery, in other words, was introduced 6,000 years ago. And according to some, it was introduced by beings from Orion. So there we have the shooting star going through Orion, almost like putting a red line through and saying, that is over, that is done, that is now complete. So it's funny how, just like with dreams, you know, sometimes when you look at them with a little bit of perspective, you see a whole nother meaning come forward.
Well, I like that. So let's go back to the non-concept of time. So how do we deal with this, time doesn't exist? How do you sort of begin to have your mind grapple with that? Or is there even anything to grapple with?
All of the above. My first book, which came out in 2011, is called Navigating the Collapse of Time. And so I did actually investigate a lot of these ideas. And what I've come to understand and appreciate is that only part of our minds are invested in the experience of time. There's another part of us that lives or exists outside of that concept. And in a sense, we are the beings that choose moment by moment which aspect of mind or which lens we want to perceive our experiences through. The part that is invested in time is in fact invested in the whole experience of separation from source, separation from wholeness. And because of who we are on a very fundamental spiritual level, you know, we are divine creations of a divine creator. Even when we imagine something such as time, we really do a bang-up job. And so the part of our mind that is invested in time also is invested in an identity. The ego or the false self is a time-based concept. You know, we constantly refer back to past experiences and past reference in order to assume who we are in the moment. And yet that other part of the mind that really never left that state of perfection, and you can call that soul, you can call that spirit or higher self, is in fact somewhat disinterested in the experience of time. It's not invested in a time-bound identity. And we, as the choice maker between those two modalities, once we awaken to the fact that we have a choice, and that is a key, of course, consideration, is that we can actually choose moment by moment which lens in which to perceive our experience. And one of the easiest tricks that we have, or learning tools, you might say, we have for that is the breath itself. As many of our ancient traditions have practiced for thousands of years, when we put attention on the breath, we are by necessity taking it away from any past or future reference, because the breath always occurs in this moment. And when we give attention to the breath and we give attention to this moment, we are in fact saying, I'm no longer giving permission for my mind to wander outside this moment. And we begin to also appreciate that this moment is the only time we ever truly experience. When we were in the past, let's say whatever we were doing even an hour ago or a day ago, our experience nonetheless was this moment. And when we get to whatever future we can imagine, when we get to 5 minutes from now or 5 years from now, guess what? We're going to be in the same place. We're going to be in this moment. So why not be in this moment consciously?
I love that. So if I'm understanding that, you're giving me a bit of an aha, and that is that, you know, there's a part of our brain that loves the oneness and knows that we are eternally there. And therefore, when it gets bored with this whole thing of judgment, of comparing, you know, myself to other or other to something, or this is better than that, or past to future, or whatever, when we get bored with that and we just come back to the eternal one, which is the breath and the now, all that just disappears.
Yeah. Don't give it attention and it has no reality.
Well, I have a very important question now for you, and that is moving from time. I know one of your loves is rock and roll. So how does this all fit in?
Perfectly. Actually, I've had a bit of a rebirth in that area. As a guitar player and a singer, I've always played with bands, and taught my kids how to play so I could have a band to live with. And recently, my wife has picked up the bass, and I knew she was going to be a good bass player because she's a great dancer. She's got real good internal rhythm, and sure enough, now she's been playing for about a year or a little over a year, and we've now got a percussionist and a three-piece. So it's just such a wonderful. Well, it's an opportunity to be in the now when you're sharing timing and rhythm and all of those elements of music with others. It really is a communion in the moment. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that now.
Yeah, rock on. I like it. That's great. So that's great that you're having the rebirth of that part of yourself, because I just can't think of you without a guitar. And in actual fact, I can see one right behind you now.
Oh yeah, never too far away.
Never too far away, right? And of course the amp. You got to have the amp.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Right. So time was time was a big part of your aha and your understanding. What were some of the other things? Like, how did you come to this realization? Like, were you gifted with this awareness, or did you come with more intuitive gifts, or how did this happen for you? What was the aha moment?
Well, that's a great question, and I do have to go back to an experience that really catapulted me in the direction that I've taken, and that was a download through actually a simple request through a prayer. And I was actually with some folks who at the time were part of what was called the Jesus movement, or the Jesus freaks, you know, the guys with the guitars and the long hair, but with the big crosses on them and stuff, and like sort of hippie evangelists. And I came home one day, and my partner at the time had invited two of these guys into the home, and you know, a short conversation, and one of them said, well, can I pray with you? And yeah, I had no real desire to do so, but I had no resistance either. And almost out of just being courteous, I said, sure, why not? And anyway, we joined together with this prayer, and bam, I was hit with this energy unlike anything I'd ever experienced before or since, for that matter. And I was in a state for probably up to 2 or 3 weeks where everything that was going around me, I was perceiving in multiple dimensions or modalities simultaneously. It was like having 12 television stations going in front of you all the time, but being able to track each one. And it was, of course, a mind-blowing experience. I didn't have much of a grounding in metaphysics or even psychology at that time to appreciate what was going on. I just knew that it was very significant. It was equally fascinating and terrifying at the same time, because it would occur to me, how am I going to survive like this? How am I ever going to, you know, make my way in the world in this state? And so at a certain point, I remember being just physically exhausted one evening, and I laid down and I said, God, if you exist, and I have no clue that you do or you don't, but if you have anything to do with this, take it away, because I won't survive. And immediately upon that request, there was a cool wave, and I remember it tangibly from head to toe, and whatever that energy was, it left, and left me wondering. So for years afterwards, decades, I would say, because I was 20 then, right? Yeah. I never really understood, or that's the gradual learning part. Okay, so that was the kickstart. Yeah. And then it was almost like I was given an opportunity to go back now and learn the baby steps of what that truly meant. And I did intuit at the time that it was a foreshadowing of what we are all coming to, this multidimensional awareness. It was a foretaste, a gift really, to give me a bit of a clue as to what our potential is.
Well, that's really exciting. I mean, well, you know, I can't help but say this, but it's cheaper than acid, your experience.
And it was actually better.
And it was better, you know, and maybe you do have flashbacks, I don't know. But this did to put you on a path. I mean, I can see it from your experience, and it did take you to India, looking for this. How could you have this reoccur now that you've had this, flash of enlightenment? How does it become a permanent state? And I know that if I remember correctly, you went and learned about the oneness blessing as one of those methodologies in which to experience that, and also to allow others to have that blessing.
Yeah, that was a great experience, and going to India, and it kind of like the 2012 thing. It didn't necessarily live up to my highest expectations, but again, gaining some perspective on it, I could see that it was a very important anchoring in some of the facets and aspects of the spiritual life. And again, one of the things that really sticks out in our memory of that time, because we spent about 2 or 3 weeks in the ashram there of the oneness movement, was we would sit in the evening in the presence of these folks they called cosmic beings. And these cosmic beings were put into to a state, or were in a state of such high cosmic awareness that they were barely in the body. They had to be, they hobbled onto stage, and they had to be accompanied and all this with helpers, because they were so infused with spiritual light that they could hardly relate to the body. And sitting in an auditorium with hundreds of people, with a dozen of these cosmic beings on the stage, was a very powerful, transformative energy to be in. People were going through all kinds of releases, physical contortions, and all kinds of experiences, and these beings weren't saying anything, just being in their presence. So it was a real sort of an awakening to, again, what is the potential, even in this human form, of expansion and growth. So I've never met anyone like that ever since, and maybe someday we'll go back there. But hanging out with those cosmic beings was a booster, you might say, in my appreciation of what we're capable of.
Well, that's really exciting. I'd like to continue talking to you about this, but we are near the end of the show, unfortunately. And seeing not necessarily talking to cosmic beings, what would you like to leave the audience with? How did they get from where they are to where you're talking about this aha, this understanding of?
Well, first of all, just the appreciation that we are all equal beings, and that we all are entitled, you might say. We all have a birthright and a destiny for this higher awakening. We happen to be in a transition, a species-wide transition to a new form of humanity, and think of it as a birthing. And birthings are not always linear. They're not always predictable. They can be quite chaotic. And even cosmically speaking, as far as the solar and galactic energies are concerned right now, it's like that energy is providing the contractions, the actual movement pushing us towards this birth. But I really feel that the birth itself is imminent, and that the joy of this new release into greater freedom and multidimensionality will totally obscure all memory of the suffering of the past. So I just encourage everyone to find some kind of a practice, and it doesn't have to be formal, but something that brings you back to the moment, back to silence, so that we can learn to find the center of the storms that are going to be raging around us for a little while yet. Something that gets you there. And for some people, it's a walk in nature. For others, it might be a formal practice or communing with others of like mind. But we all need some kind of an anchor and some kind of a daily experience. We can talk till we're blue in the face about these ideas, but it's the experience that we own and can never lose. So find something, ask for guidance to be shown a method or a means whereby you can connect with that inner silence.
David, it was a pleasure. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.